Uncle. Let's move on. And there we go. Away we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world today. This is Coffee Talk, or at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on Twitter, if anybody uses that, or X, formerly known as Twitter, as the case may be, as well as fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon, as we get ready to jump into a conversation about what's going on in the world today. What's going on? Too much of one thing and not enough of the other. Taking a look at the various news prompts that are happening around the globe. Some things you may know about, some things you may not. And of course, we'll have a little discussion about it. I'll throw in my 2 cents, and maybe it will benefit somebody, maybe not. That's okay. That's okay. I'll give you my honest opinion, if nothing else at all. And of course, for those of you who are listening and not able to see what's going on, I do try to read as many of the comments as I reasonably can, so that you can keep up with the conversation for those who are able to join us live at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the YouTube channels. Again, that's Coffee Talk and Prepper University on YouTube. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people who have chimed in there so far today. I see Dilo is here. Helter is here. Dragon is here. Several Halloween references, because it is, of course, October 31st. Keisha is here. Urban is here. Boogers. Michael Adams. Monkey. And of course, for Halloween, I will be turning the lights down low and ignoring the door. No, out here, nobody comes anyway. I don't think I've ever seen a trick-or-treater in the area where I am. It's too rural. But hey, that's fine. But if I was in more of an urbanized area where there might be hordes of kids coming and knocking at the door, you could guarantee my lights would be off. I don't want to be bothered. Preparedness Veteran is here joining us today, as well as Armored Ghost. Armored says, has anyone ever given toothbrushes for treats instead of candy? Yeah, give the kids something they don't want and probably don't actually use anyways. They don't use toothbrushes. I used to have the hardest time in the daycare with kids brushing their teeth, and also in the juvenile justice with teenagers don't even know how to brush their teeth properly. I'm bringing them in for dental appointments. They've got to have extractions, half a dozen fillings, rotten gums. They don't brush. It's incredible. Most people don't do it right anyways. I see Donna is here. Says, happy Halloween. Be safe. Good. And Dilo says he's back. Ads are in the way. Well, if the ads are playing, maybe I'm getting a piece of it. You never know. So I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today as we get ready to jump in. And of course, for those of you who can see, here's Dusty, joined by Dusty here, sitting in the chair, keeping me company, taking a nap. And we'll go ahead and we'll start pounding into some of what's going on in the world today. And this one I thought was interesting. And of course, this is something having to do with the border in the U.S. And this comes from everybody's favorite newspaper, USA Today. It's turned into a garbage newspaper, quite frankly, but the same article you can find anywhere. I just grab random articles sometimes. Federal judge orders U.S. border authorities to cease cutting razor wire installed by Texas. And this is really kind of interesting. And here you see some border patrol up here. And then here's a bunch of migrants. I love the guy wearing the Jordan basketball outfit here. That's a nice touch. Cutting through this or trying to get through this concertina wire. And what's odd about it, and I'll read the article in a moment. I haven't read this yet, but you've got the leadership down there butting heads constantly because these guys get orders to put the wire up and then they receive orders from someone else to cut the wire down. So, yeah, one hand not knowing what the other hand is doing, basically. Austin, Texas, a federal judge on Monday ordered the Biden administration and Border Patrol agents to stop cutting through the razor wire installed by Texas to discourage unlawful immigration. The temporary restraining order signed by U.S. District Judge Aaliyah Moses of the Western District of Texas provides one exception that allows federal agents to cut the miles of wire in order to provide or obtain emergency medical aid for migrants. Some migrants, including children, have been wounded by the wire after crossing the Rio Grande near Eagle Pass, Texas, when attempting to enter the state. Well, that's why it's there. Instead of tearing yourself up, you're supposed to go someplace else. Moses ruled that the order will be in effect pending the outcome of a hearing on Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's request last week that federal border authorities be barred from interfering with the state's razor wire. The court shall grant the temporary relief requested with one important exception for any medical emergency that most likely results in serious bodily injury or death to a person absent any boats or other life-saving apparatus available to avoid such medical emergencies prior to reaching the continental wire barrier, Moses wrote in the court filing. The state of Texas and the Biden administration have repeatedly clashed over illegal border crossings. Texas Governor Greg Abbott's administration has implemented several measures to block migrants from entering the state, including setting up the razor wire and placing large water buoys along the Rio Grande. So there you go. There you go. And it's funny how government works against itself like that. And that's not cheap either. How much, to string that out for miles, that's, again, taxpayer expenses, your tax money at work, setting that wire up so that someone else can come down and order it to be cut. And then someone else can come by and order it for it to be replaced because it was cut. And then someone else to come by and order it cut again, over and over and over and over. Your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen. And Armit says, wondering how soon before the people and government agencies openly ignore judges. But they kind of do sometimes anyways. Urban says it's beginning to resemble Mexican-style policing issues where the various law enforcement agencies are not always on the same page or funding sources. And Monkey says the fact that a state is doing the job of a federal government is saying something. True. And he says trying to prevent illegal crossings. Well, they're the ones that suffer the most from it. Armit says, why can't the state just guard the wire from the feds? Yeah, I know. I know. And Helter says it's interesting to note that the Border Patrol was initially ordered by a federal judge to cut the razor wire, but now they're being ordered to stop. And yeah, that's kind of the point. Again, the one hand not knowing what the other hand is doing, or one hand knowing what the other hand is doing and not being able to do anything about it. Put the wire up, cut it down. Put the wire up, cut it down. Too many chiefs and not enough Indians is the old expression. And they used to use that a lot in management, because you have one manager tell you something and then another manager comes along and says, no, do this instead. And it's like, well, who do you listen to? Who do you listen to when both of those managers are on the same level? One's not higher than the other necessarily. Dragon says the state is finding new and exciting ways to scrape the bottom. And John has joined us. Thanks for popping in today, John. Hope everything is going well. This always amuses me when I see government doing stuff like this, but it's not really very funny at all because it's a waste of funds. It's a waste of tax money. It's a waste of time, a waste of energy. And these are women crossing the border. There's some pretty hefty chicks. I just noticed that. I don't know if you can see this this video clip here. They don't look like they're starving for somebody who must have walked like 3,000 miles. If you listen to the Biden administration, there's some thick girls. Look at that. They don't look like they could walk 2 blocks. Just an observation. Just an observation. And there goes John Absolutely. Tax is extortion. Yes, I'll never let that go. Tax is extortion. One of these days, I'm going to put it on a t-shirt. And while we're on the subject of immigration or exportation of migrants, if you will, illegal aliens being repatriated, as they like to say, to put it nicely, repatriated. And this comes from AFP. We spoke about this a few weeks back because Pakistan is about really sick and tired of their migration problems, and they got it worse than we do because at least we don't have suicide bombers yet. We yet give it a little time, and you see this caravan, and it looks like a hot mess. For those of you who can see this image, these are people leaving because they told anyone who is from Afghanistan that is not a citizen, Pakistan told to get the hell out. Tens of thousands of Afghans flee Pakistan as the deadline looms. Wow, that looks like look at all the line of trucks full of people. They're leaving. Pakistan isn't fooling around though. It's not like in the United States right now, or the UK, or anywhere else in Europe or the Western world. Period. More than 10,000 Afghan migrants rushed to the border on Tuesday, the last day of a deadline for 1.7 million Afghans to leave Pakistan voluntarily or face arrest and deportation. The government has said it would begin arresting undocumented Afghans and taking them to the new holding centers from Wednesday, from where they will be processed and forcibly returned to Afghanistan. They're going to clean them out too, because they expect to be paid to throw you out of the country if they have to come and find you. So whatever they've got, they're going to take it. So yeah, they're better off leaving now while they can. The Taliban government in Kabul says the policy amounts to harassment. Oh, that's too bad. Thousands of Afghan refugees are waiting for their turn in vehicles, lorries, and trucks, and the number continues to grow. Ishrad Mohammed, a senior government official at the Tokam border, told AFP more than 10,000 refugees have gathered since this morning. More than 100,000 Afghan migrants have fled Pakistan since the start of October, when the government announced that 1.7 million Afghans, it says, are living illegally in Pakistan, have a 1-month deadline to leave. To avoid any humiliation by the Pakistani authorities, I have decided to leave. Zulfiqar Khan, who was born to refugee parents in a sprawling Peshawar aid camp, told AFP last week. More than 80% have left via the northern Torkham border in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, where the majority of Afghan migrants live. Police in the province said they have not yet begun arrests as families leave voluntarily, but Afghan refugees in Karachi and Islamabad have reported arrests, harassment, and extortion. Well, probably not yet, but they will be. Lawmakers and activists, here we go, have said the scale of the crackdown is unprecedented, appealing for more time for Afghans, some of whom have lived for decades in the country, to be given more time to pack up with dignity. They've been living in the country illegally for decades. I don't blame Pakistan for wanting everybody to get out. But that's how you do it, folks. Again, cheaper to throw them out than it is to pay for them. They're a burden, especially since, and I think if I remember correctly from the previous article, just this year, they've had something like 24 or 25 suicide bombings, and they were all Afghan terrorists. And they said, okay, enough. All of you get the hell out then. If you don't have a legal claim to be here, leave, or we're going to throw you out. And when we do, we expect to be compensated for it. We're going to take your money. Cruising says glutes of mass proportion, talking about the previous story there. Monkey says YouTube deleted my comment. Oh my God, here we go again. But basically, the next illegal prevention is using. I can't read that. He's using code. Preparedness says Pakistan expects them to leave, but will not leave a country they have entered. H12 says you can't convince me that no one in Gaza knows how to hotwire a car. and they could leave Gaza if they wanted to. Yeah, they could, but they are professional victims, and we see a lot of cultures that behave that way. Dragon says Islamic countries would have cried for months if this was done by India. True. And Urban says only Muslim majority countries are allowed to protect their borders and deport illegal migrants. Seems that way. And Monkey says it's landmines. Okay, that's what I couldn't read. I see it now. I see what you wrote. I couldn't make it out at first. Landmines. But yeah, get out. We're tired of you. We're tired of paying for you. We're tired of the harassment. Go back where the hell you came from. Go back to Afghanistan. Good luck. So long, and thanks for all the fish. And I got to wonder, can I really blame them? Can I really blame them for taking that type of a stance? And they're not the only ones, because we're seeing this starting to happen in Europe. As we pop over here, and this comes from Reuters. Is it Reuters? I don't always pronounce it right. Sometimes I feel like Les Nessman from WKRP and how he used to screw up pronunciations. There's a famous bit where he's talking about tennis player Chai Rodriguez on the air, and then Johnny Fever reaches over and presses the mute button, and he says, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "It's Chichi Rodriguez less. Chichi Rodriguez." You can't always pronounce everything perfectly. I don't have a script. I don't have a crew. What are you going to do? But according to this, it says Nordic countries to cooperate more on returning migrants to the countries of origin. Oh, now you want to send them back. Copenhagen. The Nordic governments intend to step up their cooperation to return immigrants without legal residence in the region to their countries of origin. Ministers from the 5 countries said in a joint press conference in Copenhagen on Tuesday. Denmark, which aims to only accept refugees under the UN's quota system, that's bad enough, has drawn strong criticism from the United Nations and human rights groups alike, as its immigration policies have toughened over the past decade. You know who doesn't help? Who doesn't help you? Who offers no assistance? Who has no valuable input? The United Nations and human rights groups. Back to the article. However, the Danish model has become more popular as anti-immigration voices have gained traction across the Nordic region. The Swedish government is looking towards Danish immigration policies as the country battles gang violence caused by an irresponsible immigration policy and failed integration, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said last month. Yeah, failed integration because they don't want to be part of your culture. They don't want to be part of your culture, or else they would have applied for citizenship the right way in the first place. The Swedish government is truly looking at how the Danish government has worked with both fighting organized crime, but also on migration issues. Sweden's Minister of Migration, Maria Malmer Sternergaard, said at the press conference. Finland has also seen a rise in anti-immigration policies as their newly formed government in June said it had agreed to cut refugee quotas and make it more difficult for foreigners to obtain citizenship. This cooperation will be supporting our governmental program because it's very concentrated on immigration rules and the returns, especially, which have been the weak link in our system, Mari Rantanen, Finnish Minister of the Interior, said. That's 2 Maris. That must be a popular name. The ministers of Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, and Iceland have agreed to strengthen cooperation between diplomatic personnel in charge of returning migrants from the respective Nordic countries to their countries of origin. The 5 countries also have agreed to arrange joint flights to take illegal residents to a third country through the European border and Coast Guard agency Frontex. Drop them off in Germany. They're the ones that started it all. As we catch up some of the comments, Helter says Afghanistan cannot absorb this many returnees. This will exacerbate the humanitarian situation. And Preparedness says Reuters. Yeah, I try. Urban says, I remember when Les Nessman threw a bunch of Thanksgiving turkeys out of the weather helicopter because he thought they could fly. That's right. Oh, the humanity. I remember that. That was one of their radio stunts. Good show. Good show. Had a hard time getting the music to put it on disc because they played real music on the show and everybody wanted a piece of the pie. And they released a WKRP on DVD with altered music and then re-released it again once they got the music figured out. But yeah, great show. But this is what they need to do. Again, I can't argue with that. Send them back where they came from. They can't take it. None of these Western countries can take it. They're already beyond the saturation point. They're already a massive burden on taxpayers, a massive burden on crime, on sanitary conditions, on all sorts of problems across the board in all of these countries. And most of the people there, they don't truly have a refugee status. They don't truly have an asylum status. There's a lot of them who are troublemakers. They're criminals. They're possibly terrorists. Going back again to what we talked about in previous articles, as many as 74,000 special interest aliens have crossed over our southern border since in the last 2 years, since the onset of the Biden administration. Special interest aliens being criminals and possibly terrorists. It's scary. It's scary. What are you going to do? They're already here. They're already all over the Western world. They're in Australia. They're in Canada. They're in the UK. They're everywhere. They're in Spain. It's unfortunate. Now, this is one that I thought was really funny. And this is another USA Today article. But again, you can find whatever you want, wherever you want. And it's about Michael Irvin. Michael Irvin, who is a former football player. And it's something that I often think about rappers. His son is a so-called professional rapper now. And he called him out. He called him out publicly. H12 says he remembers the WKRP Turkey episode was epic. WKRP was a good show. It was a fun show. And they don't do TV like that anymore, hardly. What's going on here? Am I still on? Because it's acting up. Let me know if you can still see and hear me because it's acting funny. The feed is acting funny. Back to Michael Irvin, who I believe he was with the Dallas Cowboys. Wasn't he a Dallas Cowboy player for like 12 years? And now he's like a sportscaster. Is that correct? It says Michael Irvin calls out his son, Tut Tarantino, his hip hop persona. You grew up in a gated community. Ha ha ha. For Michael Irvin, Tut Tarantino's street credit doesn't pass the dad test. The sports commentator and NFL veteran father of rapper Tut Tarantino criticized, and I've never heard of Tut Tarantino. I couldn't name any rapper past like 1992. Criticized his son's hip-hop persona during an appearance on Undisputed, published Thursday. Irvin brought up Tarantino's rap image during a panel discussion of NBA player Ja Morant. I got a son. He raps. His rap name is Tut Tarantino, Irvin says. If you ever listen to some of his raps, I'm like, oh my God, where does this come from? You grew up in a gated community your whole life. Tarantino has released 2 albums to date, Tarantino World and Free Brack Part 1. The rapper's latest single includes Jokes Up First and Whip Work. I don't know what any of that means. He's rapping my life because we romanticize and fantasize about that old thug life, ghetto life, and all that stuff when we used to work to get away from, Irvin said. Now we've gotten to the place somehow that we're running back towards that in the music and in everything. He's right. It's disgraceful, actually. Tarantino isn't the only rapper who's attracted scrutiny of their hip-hop persona in recent years. Teen influencer and rapper Lil L-I-L, Tay, Lil Tay. The only person I ever knew named Tay was a woman. Went viral in 2018 with several videos of her flashing wads of cash while seated in fancy cars and doing house tours. Okay, so it is a female. She's self-labeled as the youngest flexer and now has more than 3 million followers on Instagram. So people think it's funny, I guess, because I'm 9 years old and I've accomplished so much. She said, "Good Morning America" in May 2018. I'm the youngest flexer. I can do anything I like. If they don't believe me, I don't care. Is that supposed to be her? I don't know who that is either. I don't know who any of these modern rappers are. I think it's hilarious because I think a lot of these rappers are complete phonies, complete frauds. Okay. Complete frauds. And it makes me think if any of you remember, there was a movie with John Travolta called Be Cool. Be Cool. And I think Cedric the Entertainer was in it. Was that him playing a rapper? And he threatened him. John Travolta's character threatened him. He says, "Do you want me to tell all your little friends what kind of neighborhood you actually grew up in?" And he's like, "Shut up. You trying to get us killed?" Because he grew up in a very wealthy neighborhood. He didn't have any street cred at all. That's what I think of when I think of these kinds of people. Dragon says it seems Irvin doesn't have a problem with his son rapping, but he's concerned about his safety. Rapping is a risky job. Preparedness says, yeah, they can be added to the list of other fake celebrities. And Urban says that a nation of 9-year-old rapper prophets can't be that bad, can it? No kidding. And Keisha says you're breaking up just a little bit on my end. Anyone else having a problem with that? Oh, and who was it on because another big fraud, believe it or not, Public Enemy. Public Enemy. And what was that guy's name from Public Enemy? There's a specific guy I'm trying to remember the name of. Was Dr. Is it Dr. What did he call himself? Not Chuck D. There was one guy, the guy who was like their security guy, the guy that had the ones that used to do the power salute and they all wore the black outfits. I can't remember his name. He's not Dr. Dre, not Dr. Dre. Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I just can't think of his name. He was the real activist. He was the real activist. And I'm trying to look up the name. I'm trying to see if I can find his name, but I can't find it. Because they had the bit where they talked about Elvis was a racist in one of the songs, and they retracted it. They took it back and said, "Oh, we didn't really mean that." Because there was a big rumor about Elvis being racist that was thrown out in the 60s because of a expose from Jet magazine, who was invited to interview and observe Elvis and found no problem. They were like, no, he's not a bad guy at all, really. And there's still that rumor, and they pressed on that rumor, but then they backpedaled when they were called on it, Public Enemy. And it caused a breaking away of one of their main members who was, no, it's not, who is all these names coming from? It's not Malcolm X, Megan, and it's not Quincy Jones. I'll have to, if it comes back to me, yeah, Joey, Public Enemy. If it comes back to me, Professor Griff, that's it. I remember now. Professor Griff. There was a character associated with Professor Griff who was for real a hardcore militant type, and he broke away from them when they started backpedaling about some of the racist remarks and comments and things that they had done, because they had done it for publicity, not because they really necessarily thought or felt that. Professor Griff. That's the name I'm trying to think of. Sorry for all the confusion, but we sorted it out. And it again, they were trying to portray an image. It didn't necessarily reflect who they were or what they really thought, but they had a target audience and they wanted to make sure to hit that target. Professor Griff wasn't happy about it, ultimately, because he was for real a militant type in real life. I don't agree with a lot of the things Professor Griff has to say, but at least he's honest about what he thinks. He doesn't try to disguise it or play games. Oh, now, here's a story you may not have seen. Here's a story you may not have seen. It's out of Houston. You may have seen it, and I'm going to play the clip, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. There's a video clip associated with this. And I've heard something about this, and this is from KHOU TV Houston. It's a local TV station. And you have this kid here, and I think this is him in his arraignment. And I'm going to try to play the spot. Hold on a second. No, that's an advertisement. I'll let that run, and then I'll turn this on. It says, judge sets bond for 19-year-old seen sucker punching people at Houston area park. Okay. How long is this? This is short enough. Let's see if I can play this for you.
Punching people at an area park just appeared in court.
Minutes ago, we learned about the details to the crimes and his bond. Jason Miles has been following this story since Friday. He joins us now live from the courthouse downtown. Jason.
Well, prosecutors requested a $75,000 bond on just one of two charges this young man faces, but he ended up getting a combined bond of $10,100. Now, 19-year-old Alfred Lewis appeared in court just within the last half hour or so. We're allowed to shoot those PC court hearings off a video screen. Lewis charged with assault and aggravated robbery related to viral videos showing him sucker punching people, random men walking in Wortham Park. That's up in the Cypress area. Turns out Lewis was also armed at the time, according to court records, something that was not completely clear initially to those of us who saw the video. Here's a little bit of what was read aloud during the court hearing.
In this case, he initially held the complainant at gunpoint. Then, when the complainant refused to give up his cell phone, he hits the complainant in the head and puts him in a chokehold. The complainant advised he later saw videos of the crimes on social media. The defendant approached the complainant from behind and hit him in the head. As his co-defendant was filming the crime, the defendants laughed at the complainant when he asked this defendant, "Why are you doing this?" The complainant advised he later saw videos of the crime on social media.
You may recall I interviewed Lewis on Friday, and he admitted to making a bad mistake, just making videos for views and clicks. His bond conditions include not having contact with his alleged accomplice, the 18-year-old who shot the videos. Lewis also to remain at home between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. He will also wear an ankle monitor. Again, his bond, combined bond for an assault and aggravated robbery charge, $10,100.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. I was kind of hoping it would have his interview because the media found him before the police did, and they went to his house. Nice house. This is not a poor kid. You can't sit there and say, "Oh, he's in poverty. He's in poverty," and you should feel bad for him. He and his friend were filming, running up behind people, and the people he assaulted, my understanding is, were elderly men, okay? Retirees. Ran up on him, sucker punched him, all right? And then when they interviewed the kid, when they went to his house, and it was this guy that's image is still up here. He's the one, I believe, that went to interview him and ask him. He was like, "Oh, man, I feel bad, and I'm sorry, and it was just a mistake." And, the video only shows the bad part, not the good part. And he says that he apologized, and he shook hands with the people, and he gave the one guy a hug. All of that's bullshit. He lied about all of that. That's not what happened. He was armed at the time. He did pull the gun on at least one of the people. He brandished it to one guy and pulled it on another one, told him if he didn't give up his phone and his wallet, he was going to shoot him in the foot. On camera, okay, so you can't deny it. The people who he attacked saw, I guess, those video clips on the news and called it in because the police wanted them to come forward, and they did. This guy goes to court. He gets a $10,100 bail, which, basically $10,000 bail, which his parents are able to pay for. And he is not a kid. I call him a kid because I'm older. He's 19. And the other guy who was filming it is 18 years old and 19 years old. I don't recall people doing this kind of stuff when I was a kid. Fights, sure. Okay. But BS pranks like this, and he's being dishonest about it. He was dishonest about it. He was armed. He did brandish a firearm to one person and pointed the gun at another person. It's incredible. Anarchy is here. He says hi from Minnesota. Joey chiming in on something entirely different, but I'll read the comment. He says, I liked how the FBI says Muslims are the victims of American domestic terrorists when they're the ones calling for the annihilation of Jews. Good point. Urban says that news channel and reporter finally had to reluctantly admit that it wasn't just an errant teenager. Oopsie, even now they treated him softly. Dude is a violent offender. He got caught this time. And you can't tell me this is the only time he's done something really stupid or violent like this. And 10,000 bail, again, they wanted 75. The DA wanted 75. He got 10. The fact that they could even pay it. Don't tell me he's a poor, underprivileged kid. All right. And if you saw, and I'm a little frustrated actually, because I was hoping that they had the original interview video clip, because you can see his house. He's not in a housing project. He's not in a rundown trailer somewhere. It's a decent house. It's a decent house. Helter says his family will tell us what a great kid he is and will blame society or someone else. It isn't hard to raise good kids. Apparently, it's extremely hard because most of the kids nowadays are a bunch of monsters. They poor parenting, bad influence from the media, bad influence from the social media, as well as like just entertainment media, emphasis on selfishness from television, from movies, from music. There's so much that can be said, but all of that can be deprogrammed by healthy parents, a healthy parent-child relationship. And obviously it was not. Obviously it was not. Unbelievable. Preparedness says they just know the penalty will be a token effort. One day they'll pick the wrong guy. Indeed. And I saw a video clip yesterday of a prank gone wrong with someone pretending to pour gasoline on a car at like a gas station or something. And it was an old man. He looked like he was 80, pulled a gun on him. And the guy who was doing the prank was like, oh, please wait. It's just a prank. It's just water. We're being filmed. Please. You never know. He could have been killed. He could have been killed. And here also, what if one of those guys, what if one of those old dudes was armed and pulled on that kid, especially seeing him with a firearm? He would be completely justified in putting him down. He would be. Also, another interesting side observation here. You ran up on an old man, two old men, and sucker punched them. If you saw the video clip, I mean a full-on like haymaker swing punch, and didn't hurt them. If you weren't armed, you probably would have gotten the floor wiped with you. Seriously. How weak are you at 19? If I was 19 and hit a guy who was in his 70s, I probably would have killed him. Fluke Man says he made it. They always make fake apologies when they've been caught every time. Of course. Of course they do. He's sorry he was caught. Joey says, have you covered the story about the teens who ran over the ex-police chief and murdered him? They recorded it on video and laughed about it in court. No, I don't think I saw that. I don't think I saw that. Dragon says we shouldn't allow this kind of behavior. This is not about race. This is about humans caring, I guess you mean for one another. And it's what we need, seeing all this stuff is happening around in the world. And then Fluke Man says, the left wing will always make excuses for non-whites, particularly blacks, even when the excuses don't make sense. He's rich, but he's underprivileged rich. Yeah. And unfortunately, if you saw a reversal of this, if this was a film, and it was two white kids with one filming and the other acting, ran up on a black person, Hispanic person, anybody else, and did that, they would be calling it a hate crime. They would be calling it a hate crime. They would be calling it a racially charged event. They would make it out to be one, even if it's not. This is these two kids being stupid and trying to get TikTok views. And more so than just being stupid, being cruel as well. We're in a culture where for a lot of young people, it's become socially acceptable to just be cruel. You know what I mean? Cruising said hitting someone in the back of the head like that is attempted murder. And it's cowardly. It's very cowardly. Very cowardly. And of course, when what is it, Miss Kitty? You need something? Miss Kitty's under me here. Then when the guy turns around and confronts you, the gun comes out. Why? Because you're afraid? Joey says, Google Andreas Probst. It was in Las Vegas and they ran over an old white man riding his bike and filmed it. That's terrible. Doug says, plenty of great content online from Jonathan Had about what's going wrong with kids since 1995. And Urban says the two kids who killed the retired police chief are being charged and processed as adults. Their behavior in court proves they're still in shock and not quite sure who they are. A terrible example. And this is a terrible example of youth as well. But this is the youth.
He made no mention of a gun when I interviewed.
Yeah, he's mentioning that here. That's what
$100. He made no mention of a gun when I interviewed him on Friday. And at that point, I had not investigated the video thoroughly and was not aware that he was armed at the time. But again, all of this coming out in court today, a young man who admitted again to making a bad mistake, and he's certainly paying the consequences now.
Oh, bad mistake. He made a bad mistake. It was no mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing. Don't call it a mistake. Don't call it a mistake. That's not a mistake at all. That's deliberate. That is deliberate. A mistake is when you put your hat in the refrigerator. And over here is here. He says the youth are dehumanized and that they tell the youth that they have to serve in the military and go to war won't do it, not morale. But I know what you're saying there, because once upon a time in this country, if you were a delinquent, a judge could give you a choice of either jail time or joining the army. And I don't think they do that anymore. Merv says hate crime. That's what that is. And Fluke Man says it's funny how East Asians kind of like stuck in the middle. If a white person attacks an Asian, mainstream media will be all over it. But when a black person does it, Fox News probably only mainstream reports it. And Urban says that reporter will be a victim of such a crime at some point if he is as situationally unaware as he seems. He made a bad mistake, though. He made a bad mistake. Don't you understand? Don't you understand? Speaking of bad mistakes, a couple more here. Over here says, I miss the good old days way back in 2019, pre-C virus. Yeah. And preparedness says, I know the Army is bad, but not that bad. The Army is a better option than jail. But, you know, for some people who lack discipline, it's torture. It is absolute torture. Speaking of bad mistakes, you know, there's dear old, sweet old, lovable old, huggable old, reliable old, honest old Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe, back in the mail again. Keisha says some places have a boot camp program for offender teens, but are they in the Army now? Or is it just like a boot camp when you get through it and you go back in the street? And this comes from the Daily Mail. Yeah, it's official. 82,000 pages of emails where Joe Biden uses a pseudonym have been uncovered. Court filings reveal the then vice president's staggering use of 3 fake names to communicate in private. Uh-oh. say it isn't so. I just can't believe that he would do anything that dishonest. Joe Biden sent or received 82,000 pages of private email exchanges through 3 accounts using fake names when he was serving as vice president, according to the National Archives. Maybe they were emails from Publishers Clearinghouse or AARP. Joe used a series of pseudonyms on emails that were about both official and family business, according to emails found on Hunter Biden's now infamous laptop and previously reported by Daily Mail. But this is the first time the sheer volume of the correspondence has been revealed. The accounts that over 82,000 pages of emails were sent or received from include Robin Ware, JRB Ware, and Robert L. Peters. And those are the pseudonyms. The correspondence apparently spans over the entire 8-year period Joe was serving as Obama's number 2. I wonder if these emails still work and you can send a message to Biden. I'll leave them on there for a second so you can see. I don't know. The staggering figure was disclosed Monday by the National Archives as part of a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit brought by the conservative nonprofit organization Southeastern Legal Foundation. That's a lot. If I did that, I'd get in trouble. The bombshell admission comes as Republicans are seeking records revealing Joe Biden's use of pseudonyms to discuss his activities related to Ukraine with his son Hunter during his time as vice president. It is central to their ongoing impeachment inquiry into the sitting president. Well, again, go ahead and impeach him. It won't do a damn thing. Impeachment means absolutely zero. It affects nothing. The amount is well above the 33,000 emails former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton deleted off her personal server, causing a nationwide scandal. It caused a nationwide scandal, but did Hillary get in trouble? No, not at all. Not at all. Oh, and there's Hunter with a couple of prostitutes, I guess. Oh my God. Wow. It just never ceases to be embarrassing. Way to go, Hunter. Yeah, that's great. Elected officials are required by law to preserve all correspondence conducted during their time in office, including government-related work on a personal server. Joe's emails span an 8-year period, which the archives said is a large scope, and that it will take a while to provide all the copies of the correspondence. NARA has completed a search for potentially responsive documents and is currently processing those documents for the purpose of producing non-exempt portions of any responsive records on a monthly rolling basis, the filing states. It says, due to the scope of FOIA's request, and that's, of course, Freedom of Information Act, the volume of potentially responsive records is necessarily large. Give it to YouTube. The bot on YouTube will scan those documents in like 30 seconds and give them a yellow strike like they do to me. As I catch up a couple more of these comments here really quickly. Oh, wow. Let me see here. Fluke Man says parents will always say their son made a mistake, but the people he attacked doesn't have the right to defend themselves. And Over Here says, I proudly served in the United States Air Force. This is not the country I served for. I know a lot of veterans feel that way, and I feel bad for you. Joey says Biden's crime family paid for by China and the Ukraine. And Preparedness says that should be an automatic termination from office. Yeah, you would think. And Over Here says some people say I'm sorry, and I think that makes it right. I'm sorry are words. They're words. It's like I promise, I love you. They are words that people just say, and without the actions to back them up, they mean nothing. They mean absolutely nothing. I can say I love you all day. It doesn't mean a damn thing. I would rather see it in action. Let your actions speak for you. They're sorry because they're caught. And yeah, I can do without having to stomach someone's feeble apology that means absolutely nothing to them. So I totally empathize with that. Preparedness says I would struggle to send 82,000 pages. And Merv says we're all going to be veterans soon if the war pigs get what they want. A little bit of a Ozzy Osbourne reference there. Black Sabbath war pigs. Joey says Hunter Biden is the epitome of Democratic privilege. He doesn't pay child support, gets millions from China, does drugs, throws guns in dumpsters. Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Absolutely. Joey says majority of people who refuse to serve our corrupt government now because they prioritize illegal immigrants, and that multiple videos of Hunter smoking crack, but the media won't cover it. And D'Lo said Sleepy Joe is at it again. Yes, indeed. Merv says Tara Reid was telling the truth. The press shut it down. And over here says Hillary for 2024. Yeah, that'll piss you off, especially if she wins. Joey said weak men create hard times. And over here says if not Donald Trump, who else? I don't know. Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy says all the right things, but I don't trust him. I don't trust Ramaswamy. Everything he says sounds too perfect, too rehearsed. Although I give him credit for not using a teleprompter. I've got to give him credit for that. Got to give him credit for that. And here's another one about another very happy, trustworthy branch of government. Never mind the executive branch. Here's something you should all be afraid of. Coming from the National Review, talking about the IRS. It says IRS committed alarming civil liberties abuses with unannounced field visits, according to congressional reports. Say it isn't so. They have shady practices and they do things without any transparency or oversight. I don't believe it. You've got to be kidding. Before ending the practice of making unannounced field visits to taxpayers' homes earlier this year, don't think that that's really going to go through. With limited exceptions, yeah, there it is, with limited exceptions. And they're the ones that determine those exceptions. Remember, there is no oversight with the IRS. The IRS committed alarming civil liberties abuses, according to the House Judiciary Committee's subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. The subcommittee released a report on Friday detailing several abuses enabled by the unannounced field visits, including an instance where an agent turned up outside journalist Matt Taibbi's home on the same day he testified before Congress about governmental censorship. The IRS opened a case against Taibbi. Is it Taibbi? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. 3 weeks after he published the first installment of the Twitter files, and on the same day that he published the 9th installment, which detailed how federal government agencies from the State Department to the Pentagon to the CIA coordinate to censor and coerce speech on various social media platforms, which has been shown to be true now. The agency opened its examination of Taibbi's 2018 tax return on Christmas Eve in 2022, which was on a Saturday. Their offices would have been closed. Taibbi did not even owe the IRS anything. Instead, the agency actually owed Taibbi a substantial refund. The IRS assigned a revenue officer for Taibbi's case to initiate face-to-face contact on January 27th, 2023. The officer then performed an extensive investigation into Taibbi's using both publicly available search engines and commercial investigative software to compile a dossier. The dossier included information such as voter registration records, whether or not he possessed hunting or fishing licenses, whether he had weapons permits. The IRS agent made unannounced visits to Taibbi's home. When Taibbi and journalist Michael Schellenberger testified before the select subcommittee about the Twitter files, the testimony came in the wake of the subcommittee's findings that the Federal Trade Commission ordered Twitter to turn over the identities of all journalists given access to Twitter's internal communications, along with the nature of access granted to each person. Now, what strikes me particularly about this article, okay, they're targeting this journalist, right? There's a part of, they're targeting this journalist, and because he is a person of interest, because this journalist is someone that people know of and know about, it gets press, but the IRS treats most people like this. They did this stuff to me. A lot of you already know about that, who've been watching long enough, that I went through a lot of hoops with the IRS, and they still watch me. They still give me a hard time. This is how they treat a lot of people, and worse. But because this is someone of interest, this is someone who is known, this is someone who's going before Congress, it makes it into the media. Again, there is no oversight here. They can pretty much make up rules as they go and do whatever the hell they want. There's no transparency, but you're expected to have perfect transparency, or you're going to get into even more trouble. Helter says it seems extra spiteful when the IRS treats people this way. I wonder why nobody talks about abolishing the IRS, or at least reining them in. And Fluke Man is, he says, didn't Reagan distrust or dislike the IRS? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He had a huge problem with big government, and he had a huge problem with the IRS in particular. And he is, I think, when Reagan was president, was the last time the IRS was investigated for shady practices, because he went after them and he wanted oversight. And I don't know how far he got, but that's the last time I ever heard about anyone in big government, in executive branch, reaching out and saying, hey, something's really wrong with this agency. I want it exposed. I want it talked about. I want certain practices stopped. And haven't heard anything since. But so, yeah, he did have a problem with that, had a problem with big government. He's the one that's famous for quoting the nine, I think it's nine scariest words in the English language, or I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And over here wants to know what I think of Elon Musk, good guy or bad guy. I don't know. He comes off like a rebel, and maybe he's just has a rebel instinct and needs a cause. And he has gone after a couple of important things. He opened Twitter back up. Twitter's not as bad as it used to be now. He did go to the border and do what journalists in the United States have refused to do, and what politicians have refused to do. And since that, the border policies have been forced to be re-examined. He can be a good guy, but he's also arrogant, which I can deal with arrogant if you're doing the right thing. That's the same argument people have about Trump. Oh, I don't like his attitude, but is he doing the job? If Trump is going to do the job, he can be as arrogant as he wants. I don't really care about that. Sometimes when you're a person that deals with shifting around that kind of money, you get that attitude. You know what I mean? And that's why Merv says Trump 2024. So I don't know enough about Musk to say one way or the other, but he hasn't done anything that makes me really nervous thus far. Joey says Israel just did a big airstrike. Expect more Muslim retaliation in the West. Yeah, no kidding. And Doug says pro-Palestine protester caught releasing dozens of mice in a McDonald's. Really? Where's Officer Big Back when you need him? Well, they retired all of the McDonald land mascots some years ago. And Preparedness says government secret weapon, the IRS, it looks untouchable. It is. And you remember I've talked about my dealings with the IRS before because of my ex and a lot of trouble I got in. It was more than 10 years ago. They seized a property, never put it on the books. One of the agents asked me for a bribe. They would show up at the house unannounced and ask me if I had any jewelry that they could take. Do you have any jewelry or works of art that we could take today to apply to your account? And having the tax attorney basically saying, you didn't do it, did you? Because that's not what'll happen. You'll never see that stuff again or hear about it again. They'll deny it. And I was like, no, I didn't give them anything. It's incredible what they get away with. Joey says Palestine protesters throw a box full of spray painted mice into the McDonald's in Birmingham. That's bizarre. Preparedness says RIP to Adam Johnson, the ice hockey player, died in a freak accident this week. Okay. I don't follow organized sports. I'm not sure who people are. So I don't know Adam Johnson, I don't think. But that's unfortunate regardless. as we get close to the top of the hour. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about the IRS, the things that I was subjected to in dealing with them. It's like, you can't be serious. You can't be serious. This is how government runs things. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The IRS agent, and I've talked about this before, not the agent, I'm sorry, the tax attorney I spoke to, his office was mostly former IRS agents who had retired and became tax attorneys. And the reason that he retired from it was because he had, in his words, one too many clients who committed suicide. And he says, if I'm doing a job where people are so frightened and desperate that they're killing themselves, I just couldn't live with it. And I would love to see a statistic on how many people being investigated by the IRS kill themselves. I've never seen a statistic on that. I've looked for it. But we're at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. Again, this is Coffee Talk. So at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, and at Coffee Talk Chat on Twitter, as well as Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And I'll thank you all for joining me this afternoon, joining us and having a conversation. Hope you got something out of it. Hope you enjoyed spending an hour with us. And we will go ahead and do this again tomorrow.